This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. We're thrilled today to be joined by a brilliant leader. We're joined today by Aniket Bhardwaj, and Aniket is Vice President and Global Incident Response and Services Leader at Charles River Associates. Charles River Associates is one of the most elite, incredibly bright, gifted consulting firms out there. We are so thrilled to have Aniket with us today. We're going to talk some today about cybersecurity in the context of M&A and a lot more. Aniket, can you take a moment and introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about what you do and about Charles River Associates?
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. So at Charles River Associates, I lead the incident response and cybersecurity services practice, along with other vice presidents in our team. It's a critically important function where we help clients respond to and recover from some of the most high impact cyber events, such as ransomware, data breaches, business email compromise, you name it. We also work closely with external breach coaches, in-house counsel, boards, and cyber insurers, underwriters, claims to really help organizations navigate through chaos with clarity in the event of an incident, for instance. Most recently, we were dealing with a cyber incident involving a nation state threat actor targeting a critical infrastructure organization. The attack wasn't just about systems being down. It was more on the lines of potential geopolitical implications, regulatory notification obligations, and really securing evidence for law enforcement in particular. So in situations like that, you're not just really solving a technical problem. You are really helping the leadership teams manage risk at the highest level under immense pressure. On a personal note, aside from my family, which is obviously the most important part of my life, I'm someone who genuinely enjoys the intersection of problem solving and people. I really make it a point to prioritize my health and wellness because being present and ready both mentally and physically is key to showing up for clients when they need you the most. In the end, I'm there for my clients and my loved ones when they really need it the most. So yeah, thank you.
No, and I love that. The focus particularly on physical and mental health, and you need to take care of those things if you want to take care of everything else. I couldn't agree with that more. Before we get into the heart of the discussion, let's talk about nation state actors. We talk so much in World War II about the Maginot Line, about the need now to be able to build planes and ships and industrial manufacturing. And that all I think is still going to remain important. But how much is cybersecurity and cyber warfare the future of everything? And how much, both from a commercial perspective and a national perspective, do we have to be so ready to protect ourselves and be redundant as well? What's the sense of, is this the next battlefield, the cybersecurity nation state actors acting in that regard?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it is really central to the whole cyber discussion in particular. I mean, not just part of the future, but really the battleground that's increasingly defining it, really from a nation state perspective. Think about it like, everything we value from financial systems, healthcare infrastructure, energy grids to intellectual property, elections, or even personal identity now lives in or depends on the digital domain. And as that dependency grows, so does the attack surface. Cybersecurity, again, is no longer just about protecting data, for instance. It's really about protecting the trust and continuity, and in many cases, national stability, for instance.
No, and the ability to take care of business, because if you're down, you can't take care of business. You can't take care of whatever your business is as well. So it's not just about protecting data. It's about just the core ability to operate, isn't it?
There you go. Bringing back the business in particular and ensuring that your business operations are running absolutely, without being impacted, for instance. But again, at the same time, I also want to highlight, like, really, on the global stage, we are already seeing cyber warfare reshape the overall geopolitics. We are seeing nation states using cyber operations to influence economies or disrupt critical infrastructure. We have had many cases of Wall typhoon, Salt typhoon, which is pretty much, in the same spectrum. But again, the overall objective is to gain strategic advantage, all without crossing a physical barrier. So it's really like the low cost, high impact, and often deniable. And that really makes it incredibly attractive and incredibly dangerous. So whether you are, talking about the future of business or diplomacy or warfare or even social trust, cybersecurity is right at the center of it. So from my perspective, the future isn't just digital, it's really contested, and those who can secure it are going to shape it.
Thank you. And you do a ton of work in sort of the mergers and acquisitions ecosystem, a lot with various private equity firms and funds.
Mhm.
What are some of the key trends you're watching as people look at cybersecurity in the context of mergers and acquisitions?
Absolutely. Great question. So one of the biggest trends we are seeing is that cybersecurity is no longer an afterthought in M&A. It's becoming a deal driver. So PE or private equity firms are getting more sophisticated about quantifying cyber risk before the deal closes. They want to know, is there a breach history? Are there legacy systems or shadow IT that could create downstream exposure? And most importantly, how much will it cost and how long will it take to bring the target company up to the acquirer's security standards? Another trend is around post-acquisition readiness. So, for instance, PE firms are starting to ask for playbooks, such as how do we onboard a new portfolio company securely? How do we prepare for ransomware incidents or regulatory scrutiny, especially if the target is in a highly regulated space, again, like healthcare or fintech or biotech? We are also seeing more interest in attack surface management as part of the overall due diligence. Really, firms want to understand, for example, like what's publicly exposed before they even inherit the risk. Now, when it comes to cyber risk, it's now firmly a business risk. And then in the context of M&A or M&A ecosystem, it's really affecting valuations, warranties, and integration timelines. The smartest firms are using it as leverage, really both to negotiate and to protect their investment post-close. But again, really, at the end of the day, cyber diligence has become a competitive advantage, not just another compliance checkbox. That's a key element to understand. Now, the firms that get it right don't just avoid the downside, they really, move faster, pay smarter, and sleep better at night.
And take a moment. You mentioned a moment ago insurance. I think there's this perspective in business that the cyber insurance, you need to have it for various different reasons. But if you actually have a real serious cyber attack, it may or may not pay. What's your sense of the cyber insurance world? And do you help people navigate through that, companies navigate through the cyber insurance world?
So, with the respect of cyber insurance, it's becoming increasingly important. We are hearing more and more organizations really ensuring that insurance needs to be in place. Now, with respect to insurance in general, it's definitely about transferring risk, is what we have historically heard. But again, no matter how strong your defenses are, no organization is immune to cyber threats either. So whether again it's ransomware or data theft or any regulatory fallout, I mean, insurance or cyber insurance really steps in to help organizations, recover financially and operationally when those threats become the reality. So how it typically works, I mean, there are various elements to keep in mind. There's the coverage element. Does the cyber insurance policy cover things like incident response costs, forensic investigations, costs of engaging a legal counsel, again, ensuring that regulatory fines, there are too many coverage elements that we need to really keep in mind. Then they really help in the element of response coordination. So most insurance policies, they really give you access to a panel of experts, for instance, like forensic firms that they have on panel, breach coaches, PR specialists. So again, you're not alone in the whole crisis situation. In fact, it's often the insurer who activates and coordinates the whole response, which is the whole beauty of it. Then you also have risk incentives. Like in my opinion, many insurers are now like tying premiums and coverage to the strength of your cyber posture. So better controls, better coverage, better hygiene. Obviously you'll pay more if none of that is effective. And then obviously at some point may even become uninsurable if the ultimate hygiene of your IT environment is not looking good. Now, beyond the money aspect, what people often miss is that it's not just about the payout, it's about readiness. And from our perspective, the best carriers and brokers work with clients to run simulations or improve their IT and security controls and really reduce the risk before anything happens. So yes, from my perspective, you absolutely need it, not because it replaces cybersecurity, but because it really reinforces it. So just like you wouldn't drive without car insurance, you shouldn't run a digital business without cyber coverage.
Thank you very, very much. And talk about trends in incident response. I mean, I know prior to an incident, people do tabletop exercises, all kinds of things to figure out how they're going to deal with things when an incident happens. But talk about trends that you're watching in incident response. What are you seeing there?
So incident response trends definitely a growing economy at scale with respect to multiple incidents that are really being impacted. So from our perspective, the key trends that we really observe are really in the space of geopolitical activity, as I briefly mentioned, the whole cyber espionage efforts or state actors continuously targeting the overall organizations across the globe, which continues to be the key element when we are seeing different threat actors operating. We are also seeing a noticeable shift in both the frequency and really the complexity of incidents. So again, it's no longer just about ransomware. You are really talking about multi-pronged attacks that blend extortion, data theft, and supply chain compromise all in one hit. So threat actors are really more calculated. They're spending weeks inside networks and learning about different business models, or let's say understanding vendor relationships, and then really striking with different surgical precision, for instance. One major trend maybe I should talk about is the rise in targeted extortion without encryption in ransomware events. So in these cases, threat actors quietly exfiltrate sensitive data and skip the whole encryption phase. So no splashy ransom notes, not that it happens a lot, but still just a quiet threat to publish unless paid. And that really changes how executives think about visibility and response, because it's not about recovering systems anymore. It's really about the brand, the trust, and the overall legal exposure. The other trend maybe I should also cover is around the legal and regulatory stakes. They are, again, getting higher and higher. So every response is now a coordinated play involving outside counsel, insurance, privacy regulators, and really the law enforcement agencies. Their involvement is key to the whole response process. But ultimately, the timelines are shrinking, and at the same time, expectations are growing. And one more I should maybe highlight is the overall identity, which is again becoming the new perimeter. So we are seeing compromise after compromise that starts with weak multi-factor authentication or stale administrative accounts or overprivileged service accounts or identities. So again, it's not flashy, but that's where the real risk lives. So we used to, really think of incident response as a fire drill. Now it's more like crisis leadership. And companies that do well, they're the ones who already rehearsed the play. And maybe I'll just say this in the end, the most prepared clients are rarely the ones calling us for the first time.
I bet that's right. I mean, clients have spent a lot of time in this up front, probably also have better defenses, and they know you well, and they're in a better spot when something happens. Talk for a moment about this. When somebody pays for extortion or pays for ransomware, they pay these amounts to stop the extortion or live with the extortion or stop the ransomware. How often does the same actor come back against that customer or that client or company so that or how do you stop when you've paid ransomware or paid extortion payment, having them not come right back at you and doing it again? How does that, what do you see there? How does that happen?
Yes, I mean, I think now you're getting in one of the most uncomfortable truths of ransomware. Paying the ransom again doesn't guarantee closure. So really, I mean, I think we could spend hours and hours discussing this, but from my perspective, paying the ransom might stop the bleeding in the moment, but it doesn't mean that the threat actor is gone for good. In fact, we have seen multiple cases where the same group or ransomware affiliate returns within months, sometimes even weeks, either because the organization didn't fully close the back door, or worse, because word got out that they were willing to pay. Think of it like this. If a burglar, breaks into your house and you quietly pay them to leave, but you don't change the locks, what stops them from coming back? Now, sometimes it's not even the same group. The data from the first breach might be resold on underground forums, and a second group sees you as an easy target. Now, in the event of cyber sort of like underground, for instance, a willing payer becomes a high value lead. So that's why a critical part of any ransomware response isn't just recovery, it's hardening, making sure you have a solid IT security hygiene, you have full understanding of your digital ecosystem, full understanding of how many assets you have in the environment. Are they patched? Are they vulnerable? Are you taking enough steps in a timely manner so that threat actors don't end up exploiting those vulnerabilities? Really identify, clean up network segmentation, visibility, threat hunting to really ensure that you are ahead of the game before a threat actor successfully infiltrates your environment. So all of that needs to happen quickly after the whole containment, because if it doesn't, you're not just closing out an incident, you're opening the door to the sequel.
Exactly, and that makes sense. So you have to the incident response. If you are going to pay ransomware, that doesn't do you any good. It might stop the beating for the moment, but you better fix the problem, or you're going to be right back at it, maybe with that same threat actor. And I take it these extortionists, these ransomware people, it's not like the mafia where you could trust them. That you could trust their word. I take it that's the last thing you could do with criminal activity and criminal gangs is to trust that they're not going to come at you again. Because quite frankly, once you pay, they're going to do so again. There's not a code that says, "Okay, you've paid us. We're not coming after you again." I take it doesn't. That's not the world we live in. Let me ask you another question. Etiquette, how do you work with clients? And maybe give us a couple examples of what you've worked. So you don't have to mention specific names, but how does Charles River in your group, amazing, fascinating, work with clients and maybe some examples?
Absolutely. So at Charles River Associates, within the incident response practice, we work with clients across the full spectrum of cyber events, from urgent breach response to proactive resilience planning. A big part of our work is helping organizations navigate the technical, the legal, and business dimensions of an incident, all in real time. So we are not just fixing systems, we are helping leaders make high impact decisions under pressure. So let me share a few examples. In one case, a global manufacturing company was hit by ransomware that crippled their operations across 3 continents. Every hour offline was costing millions. Our team helped prioritize system restoration, coordinated with the forensics and legal teams, and supported the overall executive communications and even the insurer reporting. So once again, we weren't just restoring IT, we were helping the business survive the whole critical moment. In another matter, we worked with a private equity firm assessing a potential portfolio company. Everything looked fine on the surface, but our review uncovered weak identity controls, shadow IT, and traces of past compromise. That was a big one. That really changed the entire valuation discussion and gave the acquirer critical leverage to really protect their investment. And then there was a sensitive case involving suspected ties to North Korean IT workers posing as remote contractors. They essentially had quietly embedded themselves inside a US-based software company's development pipeline, So from the overall investigation, the risk wasn't just critical, it was legal, reputational, even geopolitical, for instance. Our team guided the client through threat containment. We also coordinated with the law enforcement agencies and ultimately helped manage the overall regulatory fallout as well. So whether it's, again, recovering from a breach, supporting a transaction, or navigating complex risks within the nation state activity, our team really built to step in when clarity really mattered the most. In the end, our job is to help clients take back control when the stakes are high and the margin for error is very small.
Thank you. And fascinating. What a fascinating set of examples. What a crisis situation that you live in. That must be stressful. And thank God you take care of your physical and mental health. It's got to be stressful when a client has this emergency and calls you folks to be ready to respond in a calm, thoughtful way, and not have your stress go through the roof. Fascinating. Talk for a second about what are you most focused on and excited about this year? When you look at this year in the next several months, what are you most focused on and excited about?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this year, I'm most focused on really helping organizations move from reactive to more resilient slash proactive. We have really spent the past few years responding to some of the most complex cyber incidents globally. Now, the question is, how do we take those hard-earned lessons and turn them into muscle memory for the future? So at Charles River Associates, we're building new playbooks proactively that really go beyond traditional incident response, focusing on proactive risk identification, simulation-based training, and tighter collaboration between legal, security, and the business. I'm also working closely with clients in the M&A and private equity space to really embed cyber diligence earlier in the deal lifecycle and to then help firms mature their portfolio-wide risk oversight. So on a personal level, I'm also excited about the intersection of cyber risk and innovation, especially the role cyber plays in shaping investment decisions, insurance models, and national security policy. I'm also advising emerging startups, really sitting on the ransomware advisory board and exploring new ways to bring context-rich risk signals into the overall decision-making before an incident ever occurs. So whether it's helping a company prepare for tomorrow or investing in the next generation of solutions, this year for me, it's all about being one step ahead.
And that's got to be just critical for clients to be one step ahead. I'm going to ask you about a couple other things. You did a master's at Johns Hopkins. Talk about Johns Hopkins a little bit. One of the great institutions in the world, your thoughts on that. And then second, you were also honored recently, and for several years in a row, as one of the top cybersecurity professionals in the world. Talk a little bit about that. Is that meaningful to you? How does it feel to be recognized like that? And talk about the Johns Hopkins experience, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. So maybe I'll cover the Johns Hopkins part. I think that was a big turning factor in overall. So my overall journey into cybersecurity started roughly 20 years ago during my undergraduate degree in computer science back in India. I got deeply interested in how systems authenticate users, especially the mechanics behind Windows authentication in general, and really started playing around with intrusion detection systems before it was mainstream. That early curiosity about how things break and how we can build smarter defenses was the spark for me. Fast forward, a few years and doing my master's at Johns Hopkins back in Baltimore really helped sharpen the passion and ultimately, expand my thinking. Also, at the same time, the program was deeply interdisciplinary as well, really combining technical depth with national security, regulatory strategy, and real-world risk management. What stood out most was that many of the professors were active practitioners, people who were shaping government policy or running security programs at major organizations, or even responding to global incidents in real time that really helped gather that experience from people, who I, studied with back in the days. So yeah, it gave me a much broader lens, not just how to defend systems, but also how to advise executives or guide legal response or connect security to the bigger picture of business and policy. So that academic foundation, really combined with almost 2 decades in the industry and consulting has shaped the way I lead today. So from hands-on technical investigations to advising boardrooms during crises, every step has built on that original spark from my undergrad days. So for me, it has come full circle. What started as fascination with how things work and how they break has become a purpose-driven career and really helping others navigate complexity with confidence. So this all was the whole baseline with respect to how I again got nominated for top cybersecurity consulting leaders for 3 years in a row. So that is definitely a big achievement. And really, I thank my family, I thank my clients for believing in me and really taking that feedback to the global agencies with that respect to then really position me as one of the key leaders in the industry with other fellow people across.
Thank you very much. Again, we're visiting today with Aniket Bhardwaj, who helps head up global security, cybersecurity, and incident response at Charles River Associates. He's ranked constantly as one of the top cybersecurity professionals in the world. Tremendous career. And I've got a daughter going to Johns Hopkins, so I'm a huge fan of Johns Hopkins. Aniket, I can't thank you enough for joining us today on the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. We're honored to have you on. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for your time, Scott. Really appreciate it.